HOA tried to take my maple grove for a bike path. Then they learned it brings in $80,000 a season. They thought it was just a patch of trees. They had no idea it was the backbone of my entire business. My name is Ethan, and that grove has been in my family for decades. It wasn't just land, it was a livelihood. Every tree was planted by my father and grandfather. Every season, it produced something we depended on. Maple syrup season wasn't just work for us. It was the time that carried us through the entire year. We tapped the trees, collected sap, and processed it ourselves. It was a system built on patience and care. On a good season, we made around $80,000. That income kept everything running smoothly, from equipment to bills to savings. It all came from those trees. Losing that grove wasn't an option. Everything was stable until the HOA expanded nearby. New homes started appearing close to my land. At first, I didn't think much of it. Development happens, and I stayed focused on my work. But then, I started hearing things. People walking near the edge of my grove more often than usual. They weren't just passing by casually. They were observing and measuring carefully. One afternoon, I found small flags placed along my property line. They were clearly marking something out. That's when I knew this wasn't random at all. Someone had plans involving my land. A few days later, I got the letter in the mail. It was officially from the HOA board. It said they were planning a bike path, and according to them, part of it would run through my grove. They described it like it was already approved, like my land was just another piece in their layout. I read it twice, slowly. Then I laughed, because they clearly didn't understand the situation. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to see how far they would push this, because sometimes silence makes people reveal everything, and that's exactly what I needed. A week later, they sent another notice. This time, it sounded more official and direct. They mentioned community benefit and shared access, but none of it included my permission. That's when I decided to act seriously. I wasn't going to let this go any further. I went straight to my records. Property deeds, surveys, and boundaries were all clear. The grove was completely mine. There was no overlap or confusion anywhere. I also pulled financial records carefully. Every season's earnings were documented properly. $80,000 wasn't just a number. It was solid proof of value. Then I contacted a lawyer immediately. I wanted everything handled professionally. He reviewed everything in detail. Then he gave me a direct and simple answer. They have no legal right to your land. That was all I needed to hear. That didn't surprise me at all, but it confirmed how I needed to respond. The HOA called for a meeting soon after. They invited me like it was just a formality. I showed up calmly, but I wasn't there to agree with them. They presented their plan confidently. Maps, drawings, and proposals were placed on the table. The bike path ran straight through my grove, like it already belonged to them. They talked about community health and lifestyle benefits. They made it sound like a perfect idea. But they never once mentioned my loss, not even for a second. When they finished talking, they looked at me. They were expecting approval without resistance. I gave them a calm and clear response. That land produces $80,000 every season. The room went completely silent. They were not expecting that answer. I continued without raising my voice. If you want it, replace that income. That's when their confidence started breaking. Because now, it wasn't just land anymore. It was a business with real numbers, and numbers change everything. They tried to downplay it quickly, said I could adjust or relocate somehow, but they didn't understand one key fact. You cannot just move a maple grove. Those trees take decades to grow fully. That kind of production cannot be replaced quickly. I showed them documents clearly, income records from multiple years. Everything was structured and undeniable. There was no argument left. Now the conversation shifted completely. It was no longer about taking land. It became about cost and consequences. And they were not ready for that, because what they thought was empty land was actually a functioning income system. The meeting ended differently than they expected. They didn't get what they came for. And I didn't give them anything at all. I stayed firm on every point. A few days later, they tried again, this time with a softer and more careful approach. They suggested partial access instead, just a small section of the grove. But even that wasn't acceptable, because disruption affects the entire system. You cannot cut through a process like that. It breaks everything completely. I stayed firm without hesitation. No access, no agreement, no compromise. Because once you give a little, they always come back asking for more. Frustration started building on their side. Residents began asking serious questions. Why was the project delayed? What was causing the issue? That's when the truth started spreading. About the grove and its value. About the $80,000 per season and what they were trying to take. Suddenly, the narrative shifted completely. This wasn't a simple bike path anymore. This was about someone's livelihood. And people started realizing that. Pressure turned back on the HOA from their own community members. People didn't like what they were hearing because it wasn't fair at all. That's when the HOA made one last attempt. They hinted at legal action. They tried to apply pressure indirectly, hoping I would back down. I didn't react emotionally at all. I handed everything to my lawyer. Because this wasn't about fear. It was about facts and ownership. And facts were clearly on my side. There was nothing they could change. Time passed slowly, and nothing moved forward for them. The bike path stayed only on paper. It never became reality. The grove stayed exactly as it was, untouched and protected. Eventually, they backed down quietly, without any announcement. No apology was given. No statement was made. Just silence remained, and the project disappeared. The trees kept producing as always. The season came and went, normally, and once again, it brought in $80,000, just like every year before. As for the HOA, they learned something important. Not all land is empty or useless. Some land carries value you cannot see at first glance, and that mistake costs you. As for me, I didn't celebrate anything. This wasn't about winning at all. It was about protecting what matters. Because if you don't stand your ground, someone else will try to take it. And they won't ask twice. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Care and Conflict for more. See you next time.